that is, again, in the Fuller Building. I think it's 41 East 57th Street. And what is the following week? Is I Am Pei. And the week after that is Rosenquist and Castelli Gallery at 420 West Broadway. He was doing a big mural for the new Capitol in Tallahassee.
Who is
Rosenquist?
Wonderful.
Going to challenge him what he's going to do with that endangered old Capitol.
Come on.
Excuse me, are we waiting, sir, are we waiting for any person over here? All right. It has a rather formal opening because of its, future use for its distribution and so on. I think we can begin now. For more than 50 years, excuse me, I'm going to start again, rushing things. For nearly 50 years, Philip Johnson has been a major force in architecture and aesthetics. A teacher before he was a student, a client before he was an architect. We are very pleased to welcome you as a master here among us. A very warm welcome to you, Philip.
Speak louder.
45 years ago, during the summer of '32, the 3-year-old Museum of Modern Art announced the founding of a new department of architecture under the chairmanship of Philip Johnson, and they referred to him as that ardent member of our junior committee. How did you manage to persuade the Museum of Modern Art that a museum was not just for pictures?
I didn't have to persuade them. Back in 1930, we had a very strong leader, Alfred Barr, that's known to every one of you, as they're old enough to walk, as the leading art connoisseur of our time. And he felt that this town needed a museum that would cover the other arts the way the Bauhaus did in Europe. And there was no reason to contain ourselves just to painting and sculpture, but that we should have architecture. So we laid our plots in 1929 already. It's almost 50 years ago. And I came aboard, and it was not hard to persuade them since I picked up all the bills. It helped a great deal. Barbara Lee Diamonstein is my time.
Oh, 6 months earlier you had organized a show before the department opened that was called the International Exhibit of Modern Architecture. A review of that show at that point in time described the exhibit in this way. I'd like to read a line or two, if I may, for you. It said it was a sort of aesthetic eyewash to a period immersed in a vast and increasing confusion of architectural and decorative tendencies. It then equivocated by offering the suggestion that many specific examples of this new international style should gain credence on the score of structural and economic necessity rather than aesthetic appeal. Why did you take that approach?
I didn't write that.
No, this was a review of it.
But they were. Somebody didn't know what they were talking about.
But wasn't
That's normal.
But wasn't there a question at that point in time that they were trying then to promote the international style for the use of that new material, steel?
No, no. That's a little bit more complicated than that. The international style came in about 1922, and it had swept Europe pretty much, but there wasn't much modern architecture in this country. So naturally, as the founding of a new department, we were all convinced, Alfred Barr and I, and Russell Hitchcock, who was with us, and wrote the first catalog, that the international style was what was coming in architecture in this country, and indeed, it's exactly what happened. We didn't any particular kind of structure. It was the look that we were after, and it conquered only too well. And now what you see so boringly around you in New York is all the result of our work in 1930.
Who termed it the international style?
We did. We named it that, and named our book that. and wrote a book called The International Style.
Which we is that?
Hitchcock, Barr, and myself.
Here you were, the first to establish the international style, and now...
The name, yeah.
Yes, and now you are the first, in a sense, to abandon it. You've become, I guess, a prophet of postmodernism.
Oh, much too sweeping.
All right.
I'm not the first postmodernist. There isn't anybody today that builds modern architecture as we knew it 10, 15 years ago. I mean, as pleasant as the Seagram building is, I think that's probably the best building in New York, in the international style. It's still a flat-topped glass box, and that we got a little bit bored with. And then another trouble with the international style was that everything looked like a box. Every church looked like a box. It didn't look like a church. A library didn't look like a library. So it failed of its own propaganda, and but it lasted, don't forget, almost 50 years, which is a long time for a style of architecture to last. The Renaissance only lasted less than that before Mannerism took over and the Baroque succeeded it. So we feel that the international style was a healthy and normal and marvelous historical period that is the source of most of the things you see around you now, good and bad.
What was the first building that you built, and what was its architectural influence?
My first building was my own house in very late in my life in 1943, wasn't it? Yeah.
42.
42. Your research is better than mine.
This is when you returned to be a student.
When I went back to Harvard to study architecture, my old age, 34, and I built myself a house then when I was a student, which was very Miesian, because I've been mostly influenced all my life by Mies van der Rohe, who was, as you know, the designer of the Seagram building, and for many, many years the leading American architect. But since then, all that influence has dried up, and we think Mies now is too boring to worry about.
You originally studied Greek and philosophy, came to New York to work at the Museum of Modern Art, and then returned as a student, already well known as a critic and an art historian.
That's right.
Wasn't that an unusual role to be in? Was the head of that department then Walter Gropius?
Yes, Walter Gropius, whom I never liked at all, was the head of the department at Harvard, but it was the best school to go to in 1940. So I went up there, but we didn't speak.
What was happening in that period at Harvard?
International style houses, wooden houses, and we all designed wooden houses under Breuer, who was a great teacher. Marcel Breuer, you probably know that name too, was a famous man, still around. And I just went backwards into my profession, that's all. Just as good as going forwards. You all come out the same place. Life doesn't begin till you're 70 anyhow, so it doesn't really make much difference whether you go to school first and then work, or work and then go to school. See? In fact, school is not, in spite of where you're sitting, not very important. You see, schools are, they stimulate your imagination, well, good for them. And I think this is the right kind of a school. But regular schoolwork is so dull and so uninformative, and you can learn so much quicker yourself. I mean, if you're interested in Brunelleschi, for God's sake, go to Avery Library and look Brunelleschi up. I never took a course in architecture. I never had a course in the history of architecture. It'd be a waste of time. If I want to know about Baroque, I go to Rome and look at it. For goodness sake, your own eyes are better than what teacher says it is, because he's probably wrong anyhow. And he's been reading the same books that you can go and read. So unless you're so lazy, if you're that lazy, you shouldn't be in school anyhow, because you should go out and learn to lay bricks or something important. Or cooking now is the only important art in my mind. No, there's one other, gardening. If you can get your garden and grow your herbs and mix your herbs right and follow Julia carefully, you'll all end up much happier, ladies and gentlemen. And maybe you won't have to go to school and come and listen to boring lectures on late in the afternoon when you should be home with a martini. I had to postpone my martini today, but I'm glad I did, because it gives me a chance to talk about myself, or Barbara Lee, which is the thing we're going to do. And that, of course, is a pleasure second to none. That's the only reason. Maybe that is a good reason to go to school, so you can come over afterwards and talk to kids about how good you are. You see? And especially gives you a kick again, as I said, after you're 70. Because then you realize there isn't anything more to work for. You know, I don't have to do a damn thing if I don't want to. I didn't have to come here, did I?
No, in fact, that's why we're so glad that you did. But nonetheless, at some point we'll talk about, even though you don't have to do anything, how much you are doing and how many new buildings there are. But before we get to the current buildings, let's take a quick trip through some of the significant ones. I guess it was Calvin Tompkins who has said that you have always been your own best client. Because
I told him that. It's a good line.
Soon after the Cambridge house, you built another house for yourself. One that, at least...
the glass house?
Yes.
Yes, that I built in 47, 48. That's where I still live.
Can you tell us about the now legendary glass house that even Vincent Scully calls one of the most important 20th century forms?
Does he really?
Yes.
I like to get some of those quotes. It really bucks me up. I didn't know that. No, it's an important building, and I'm giving it to the National Trust so that everybody will get to see it. I've had to close it because it got too popular, but it was great. I had many years of entertainment and fun there before I knew you, I guess, because you haven't been out there, somebody told me. We repaired that, but you can't come. But it's all glass, and it's wonderful. Saturday, you remember the day it snowed all day? Or was it Friday? Saturday. It was the most beautiful day we ever had in a glass house, because you could sit there all nice and warm with a roaring fire, and all around you, the sky would come down in these little droplets that you could watch like this. So you felt as if you were in an elevator going up through all those snowdrops, you know? It was terrific. I mean, you can have sun all you want, but when can you get that type of snow? And if you look out this way, it's snow. You look out that way, it's snow. You look out that way, it's snow. The advantage of being in a glass box. It's a good way to live.
I think we should use for a bit some sort of fancy architectural terms, that the way that house has been referred to. And perhaps you might put it in some context. Where did you ever get the idea to set a glass box in a natural setting, in nature, surrounded by vegetation?
Where did anybody get any idea? It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Artists really can't talk about their own work. I can give you a learned lecture on the early Mies or on late Le Corbusier or Frank Lloyd Wright in his times, but I can't talk about my own work because I don't know.
Well, perhaps you could tell us, in that glass house, there is something that is often referred to as the processional element in architecture that then recurs in a great deal of your work.
Light Dawn. She is, of course, a scholar and has done all the work necessary for this. My whole main impulse in architecture is what I call the procession, the hierarchical arrangement of spaces. To me, the architecture exists only in time and in footprints, walking, not automobiles. You can't see art from automobiles. They're a great invention. I use them all the time, thank you. But not for architecture. The way you walk toward a building, the way you are turned aside, the processional element as you get off the avenue here and climb over that snow, slipping, is a very important part of the architectural feeling, whether I'm going to enjoy this building. I did not enjoy this building. You see, the processional part was wrong. And then to come into an assembly hall this big through those particular entrances and doors, I'm not insulting anybody because this no doubt was not designed by anybody, is demeaning. I mean, that's why I built the State Theater the way I did. I wanted to be able to go in, I'm going to have a good time in this building because I got Baroque stairs to go up, and I've got the longest bar in New York, and we've got all those beads dangling, and there must be something going on here. So you get a feeling, and then as you go up those stairs, that's the right way to do a theater, I still think. You go up the stairs and come out, and as you come out and talk in the intermission, it gives you the pause that refreshes. You don't get that in most New York theaters. You step out and trip over the box office and kill all the people trying to get your cigarettes out. So we think it's nicer to have a little sense of procession. Now, in my glass house, it's just the same. It's not a theater, but it's the same idea. You approach it at an angle. You come in through the door into a vestibule. It isn't. It's all one room. But all these memories occur to you as you pass through the space. And you arrive, the living room is just a raft of white carpet. You step up onto the carpet, and then Now I'm in the living room. See? And so gradually I believe a dog is the nearest thing you get. When a dog wants to sit down, you know what he does? He doesn't go and sit down. He'll round, comes around, and usually makes 2 or 3 circumambulations and then sits down in sort of a curl. Well, everybody does that in their minds. I mean, you sort of, where's the grandfather's chair? Where do I sit? How do I feel in this environment? See? And when the chairs are exactly the right thing to each other, relation to each other, we're just right, by the way. The brilliant people here did that correctly. See, we still talk to you, but we're not facing each other. See? All those things are so subtle and so absolutely important that that how these arrangements and how you do actually physically sit down becomes the main part of architecture, more important than just sitting there and looking at it. If you come to a Greek temple, you always approach from the back, for instance, and make a 180-degree turnaround to the front of the Parthenon, for example, on the Acropolis. On a Gothic cathedral, you come through narrow streets and you're opened into a plaza that's too small from our point of view, but not from their point of view. They knew exactly what they were doing. It impresses the inevitable size of those Gothic cathedrals to huge size. Right? And so you were impressed as you were supposed to be, and then of course you burst through the front door into that enormous height. The Baroque sense of procession was quite different. The Piazza of St. Peter's in Rome is the grandest square in the world, but the church is not so important at one end. It's the great arms that just sort of gather you, and I must be in the most important place in the world. It just says it to you. But how different from the Greek way or the Gothic way. In other words, everybody has their own kind of a procession. Well, look at the Egyptian kind. Through a darker and darker and darker and thinner hole right to the Holy of Holies. Absolutely straight line, going through these hypostyle halls that go around you like this. Well, it seems to me that that's what architecture is all about, and it can be applied almost to everything except maybe an outhouse. Although even there, I think that there's room for improvement in design. And it's the first problem I give students. The function. Well, the function's so very simple. We don't have to worry about functionalism. It's the monumentality of the building that's important. Excuse me, I did your own research for you. Now you go on to your next.
Actually, you have often said that the drive for monumentality is as fundamental, I think, you said, as the drive for food and sex.
Oh, well, I second, so we say. The drive for monumentality, I feel, is inborn. Ladies wear shoes that aren't comfortable, but the ones they think are good looking. They prefer to be thought smart ass than they would to be thought practical. You know what ground gripper shoes look like, those horrible shoes they mold on your feet? You wouldn't be seen dead in those things. They're very comfortable. You're all wrong, by the way, to teeter on these heels that came down a few years ago and now going, heaven's sakes, up again. Doesn't make any difference. If you think you're better looking that way, more monumental, more acceptable, more beautiful, that's what you do. And I think that is an inborn feeling, you see? And that expresses itself by further out your clothes, further out your decoration of your apartment, further out to your decoration to the creation of your cities, to the creation of a country. We're in a very low point right now in city building. It's a shame, but we did have one great century, which Barbara Lee and I are trying to do something about, the 19th. We don't have much 18th in New York to worry about. But the end of the 19th century was the great period here, McKinney and White. 2 great periods to my mind, Barbara Lee. I don't know what you think. You must talk now. The 90s and the 20s. The 90s are the post-Richardson, McKinney and White period, all the way to Columbia University Library, things like that. And then in the 20s, we got the great building like the Radiator Building, Daily News Building, Rockefeller, ending at the Rockefeller Center. And then it got pretty darn bad after the last war. The 40s and 50s, 3rd Avenue, for instance. I think you'd have an awful time finding a good-looking building on 3rd Avenue or 6th Avenue. Especially the new Rockefeller Center buildings they're recent, but they don't inspire you in any way. But you see any building, practically any building from, there's another great period, of course, the cast iron period. What am I talking about? The whole of Soho is just preserved, to thank God, place. I remember before anybody was there. Did you ever wander down there before the rush?
Yes.
So funny to go back and find all those people there. There weren't any people there. There was just lofts and trucks and horses. But we could see the beauty of those the columns and windows. It was just fantastic.
There was a time not so long ago that surface ornamentation, I guess, or any kind of embellishment was pretty close to a dirty word.
That's a dirty word. We came in on a wave of reaction against the Art Deco, against revivalism, against using Georgian details. We thought it was dishonest. That we were very honest in those days. We're not so honest anymore. And we believed that the important thing was structure, expressing structure. Segment building, for instance, every column evenly spaced, and that column holds that building up. Don't care anymore. I'm doing a building on Madison Avenue, and it has a few little extra columns because I needed. Well, I needed sort of.
You made reference before to hyperstyle.
Yes.
Columns.
Yes,
I think
because
that
it's nice to walk among columns.
That Mr. Johnson is referring to is the yet-to-be-announced plan for the AT&T building on Madison Avenue and 55th Street. Perhaps you might give us a little preview of what that building is.
Well, that's in my new backward-looking mood, preservationist mood. It's the opposite of a glass box. It's all granite. It has nice small windows. The main shaft of it reminds the roof which, or maybe the radiator building, the ins and outs of the granite with the windows. Then at the bottom there's a 70-foot high hypostyle hall. That is a lot of columns which you wander among, but 70 feet high. The lobby is above that. So the whole thing is on a mass of great, not these little pilotis, thin little columns, as thin as you could make them, because we believed in honesty, you know, so naturally we had to make our columns as small as we could. Now we make them as important as we can. So these are 5 by 5 columns, and they're, the whole city takes life right through it and around it and in it. And it's just great, exciting. And then in the middle is an enormous arch, the height of it's 100 feet high. Arch like a cathedral. It's going to be a lot of fun. The top is a broken pediment. You've seen them on grandfather clocks and everything, or Chippendale brake fronts. So the whole top of the whole building goes like this, and there's a hole cut out of it. And the hole goes right straight through the building. And that's where the steam comes out, you know, when you've seen steam coming out the top of New York building. And at night that hole is lighted, so if you're anywhere you are, it's a very bright light will get you. Oh, it's very exciting. That'll start in the fall. But
what is the
there's details, you see.
Yes.
There's ornamentation, there's moldings, there's decorative shadowing that is part of all this, which we wouldn't have a few years ago, we wouldn't have wanted to do. But I noticed my eyes, I came down Fifth Avenue today, was caught by every building back of 1950. And then from then on, there's little thin straps and flat facades and no shadows, no details. You get bored before you start looking. It's just too bad, isn't it? So maybe we're coming into a nice new world where we can do anything we want. At the same time I'm doing that building, mind you, I'm doing a 1 million square foot building, which is large, in San Francisco. It's bigger than AT&T building, but it's all glass.
Is that the one that incorporates the city of Paris?
No, that's another one. This is ITEL.
Why don't you tell us for a moment about your new preservationist?
My preservationist efforts aren't going too well because the preservationists of San Francisco are a very ornery bunch. Just the way they are in every city, and it's lucky they are.
I was hoping you'd say that.
Oh, yes, indeed. But I find myself strained now because I've got to keep the most beautiful thing we have in the West Coast is a very
Perhaps you'd explain it
strange-
to us, what the nature of the discussion is in San Francisco and how you plan to incorporate this city of Paris interior.
City of Paris is the name of a department store out there that burned in the fire, of course, the earthquake. Then was rebuilt in 1910. And in 1910, they put a Beaux-Arts domed room in that is just so delicious. Every floor is different. Every railing is different. The roof is all painted glass with ships, and it's a delight, that's all. And it was put in the middle of an older, uninteresting building. Now the preservationists, including me, of course, want to do everything to save it. The building can't be saved because it doesn't comply with the new earthquake laws. So what to do? Well, what we're doing is taking that dome piece by piece, the whole room, every detail, every piece of color to be painted and put away, and brought back and replaced in our new building. All we're doing as architects is making a setting like for a diamond for this beautiful old room. And that would not have been possible a few years ago. But you see, so strong is public opinion in San Francisco. It forced Neiman Marcus, not known for their philanthropy, known for other things, Hisn and Hearn, but not philanthropy. But this is a fantastically expensive deal, which the people of San Francisco forced on a commercial venture.
So you're reminding us again
they're
that
a little ahead of us.
A constituency out there that is becoming increasingly vocal and
That's
visible.
right. That's
Otherwise,
right.
that really would not have been possible.
It wouldn't have happened, no.
Because it is a very expensive
But
venture.
why not? Who's more equipped to pay for that kind of thing? So I think
There may be an alternative who's more equipped. You mentioned earlier the pause to refresh, and this is not only a pause to refresh, but to renew. Perhaps you might tell us about this 10,000 paned glass building. Perhaps we should hold it up because it's a little low.
It's more important to show it to the cameras than it is to the people.
The people are first.
They can see it anywhere. So you can see it's sort of diamond. You can see it reflecting around the room. It's a star-shaped building. It's hard to see how enormous it is. It's longer, higher, and wider than Notre Dame in Paris.
It's the world's first drive-in church?
Yes, the drive-in section isn't much. This is a 100-foot-high door here that opens very slowly on beautiful hinges, and then there's the preacher talking to the 500 or 600 cars that are parked outside.
We should locate it. It's the Crystal Cathedral, the Garden Grove Community Church in California, near Anaheim, is that?
That's right. It's the Matterhorn of the Disneyland, if you've ever been out there. It's right nearby. Next time you go to enjoy yourself at Disneyland, why just go down and look at this? Because this is slightly larger
This
than
has
Matterhorn.
sequential elements, too, and the space is organized in that same way that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, but we cannot see it here at all. But what it'll do, it act as a great... It would look much like that, actually. There are no columns. It's all great space frame. Thousands and thousands of little white pipes that connect it all up. I can't wait for it. It's 400 feet long. That's 2 New York blocks. Yeah.
What is the date of completion of that church?
3 years from now. We're just digging.
Let's talk about some other of your new construction, and that is this building.
This is the opposite. You see, the nice part about architecture today is that there isn't any consistency. I can work on this at the same time, which is just pure geometrics. Faceted diamond with a mirror, made of mirror glass. You see, I can do that, and at the same minute do a McKimmey white type break front pedamental top on a skyscraper. It's the very same room in the same drafting room. I mean, that hasn't been true for many years. I remember when I was brought up, we thought it was terrible that the revivalist architects of the mid-century, mid-19th century, would do a Greek bank at the same time they did the Gothic church. Well, why not? We take it in another point, it was dishonest, naturally. But how delightful a church is much better in Gothic. And a bank has to have columns, doesn't it? I mean, obviously, you see a Doric column, you know it's a bank. Except that one on Fifth Avenue, and I don't feel safe in that glass box. My money can't be safe. This is all
True,
mental.
but it doesn't look like the Union
It doesn't
Trust.
look like a bank. You see, the Union Trust, you got to look like a bank. It'd be a... Yeah. Anyhow, at the same time I'm doing that, I can do this. This is a little concrete exercise I'm building on the place in the country, near the glass house, for a study. I have to get away from the birds and the squirrels and everything that bother you in a glass house. Well, if you want to work, I mean, because there's nature.
Do you do your designing at home mostly?
Yes, all the time. You can't design in a telephone. It's like designing an automobile. Lots of things you can't do in an automobile.
But you can design an airplane, I understand.
Just that one idea, yeah. But this, I lock myself in the squirrels can't see me, just one little window. And that's the light comes down from there, so it'll be perfect light. And the walls are all books, there's an enormous fireplace, and no telephone, and no toilet. And toilets just obstruct things. It's near enough to my own house. and besides, this gives me, I can spend more money on sheer nonsense this way than on anything practical like plumbing.
Well, you are being too modest. One of the ways that you certainly have indulged your taste is by amassing quite a collection of contemporary art. And one of the ways, from what I understand, you hang that art is in panel arrangements. Can you explain that to us, how you hang your art at home?
Well, the only logical way to hang art, because the idea is Japanese, of course. They could make a roll and hang it up one at a time in their houses. And if you hang a lot of pictures jammed to each other in a room and live there, you'll never see the pictures. I do that in my New York house, and it's hard to remember where a picture hangs. I mean, you don't really stop and absorb it. So in the country, I built one gallery for the paintings that all the walls are on a center column, and around it, like a postcard rack in a drugstore, the paintings revolve around like that.
Swinging panel.
Swinging panels that go round and round. So I show 6 paintings, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here, all at the same time. And then if I want another 6 paintings, I turn it around. Then if I want to study the pictures, I walk in behind the panels and go through them quickly. It's a very, very good way. It's hard for public museums to do it. Tom Holding was thinking of trying it, but the public gets lost in all those leaves in there. They want to see different paintings, and it doesn't work.
Well,
but for a private collection, it's, of course, great.
You have been responsible for the design of a number of museums. I'm thinking of the Munson Williams Proctor in Utica, Asia House in New York's East 64th Street, the addition to the Museum of Modern Art in 1964, and then I guess an earlier addition as well.
That's right.
The Garden Wing
1950.
50.
Mm-hmm.
The Amon Carter in Fort Worth. And now you are busy constructing, designing a cultural center in Florida, part of the Dade County Cultural Complex. Is that?
Yes, it's a part of the county development downtown in Miami.
Perhaps you could give us some idea, both as a museum curator, as an art collector, and now as a museum designer, what prevailing idea inspires what you do for museum space?
I don't know, it's been too long. 50 years ago I started on installation design, and it gets very boring after a while. Museums are really places to enjoy pictures. The design of the museum is not as important as the quality of the collection. You can see the pictures in the Uffizi if you've got good eyes and good feet. But if it would help those pictures, wouldn't it, though, if it were placed in an environment that wouldn't make you so tired?
You raise what to me is a very important point. That Dade complex, I read somewhere, was estimated at a cost of approximately $15 million. Do they have a significant enough collection to warrant that kind of expenditure, or will the emphasis be on something else?
The emphasis is on the library. There's $10 million of that is for the library, and $2 million for one museum, $2 million for the other. Very, very tiny buildings.
Yes.
What's great about the grouping down there is the plaza. You see, since it's a great Latin American capital now, Miami, it's a great international city. It's all entirely different. It's like nothing else in this country. The type of festive occasions down there are already being infused with a little more light feeling than our Puritan ethic of the North.
Yes, there is distinctly a Hispanic plaza quality.
Plaza. So I'm creating a Spanish plaza with roof tiles and coral stone and palm trees and fountains and things of that kind. It's sort of semi-detached from the city, so that everybody can rejoice. I hope to have a great deal of impromptu acting, like the Beaubourg in Paris, where you'd feel welcome to make any noise that you could be paid to listen to. I mean, you know, in Paris, if you go to the Beaubourg, there's all kinds of acts going on, and the only thing you do is to throw your francs in to keep it going. See, and if they don't have anybody watching, they leave. It's a self-liquidating theater of all the time. There are about 7 acts going on all at once in this plaza. Well, that's the life, you see. Well, that would never happen in the North. I guess we're too much snow or something.
The climate.
But Miami, you see, you feel like getting out, except right now. It's almost freezing there this morning. But most of the time it's either too hot or it's pleasant. And so the plaza life, I think, comes with the climate and the palm trees. So naturally I'm designing it. They're very surprised, of course. They thought they'd hired a modern architect. And so here it is, a series of arcades and great arches and round windows and tile roofs leaning on tile roofs, you know, the whole bit. The main building, the palazzo, being the public library. But the public library should be a palazzo of a Spanish town. There's a great movement, for instance, now among librarians that you just rent space in an office building or something. The Donnell Library kind of an approach, as against the Carrere and Hastings. Really great public library. See? But the whole library design in this country has been falling off just like every other. I mean, the museums are meant to be like Museum of Modern Art now, which I think is a terrible place.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's just a lot of, you go through the terrible elevators and you go through all those columns, you get in your way all the time. You don't know where you are, you just wander around groping. It's much too small, the ceilings are too low, and there's no sense of going grandeur as there is at the Met. I mean, you go to the Met and you may get lost a little bit, but they'll tell you soon enough. There's a nice lady that explains things right in the middle of that big room. But the room itself, you're going into a place that is pleasing to go to. The Frick, of course, is another kind of charm, residential charm. I don't see any charm whatsoever at the Museum of Modern Art.
Can we take that as an endorsement of the new $43 million expansion that has been proposed for the Museum of Modern Art? Will that solve any of its problems? Or bring new ones?
That's gotten so, that whole issue whether the Museum of Modern Art should be in the real estate business or not has gotten so fraught with emotion now you can't really figure it out at all. I'm outside the battle.
But what a calm hovercraft voice like yours comment on that situation.
I'm not going to comment. It's too fraught with peril, the whole thing.
We won't press you to it either.
But the garden, I think, is nice at the Modern, which I did, because again, the little more reply. I keep forgetting. I'm just talking to myself. Okay. I forget you don't talk about yourself as being such a great architect, do you? But the cleverness of that design, I didn't know it was done, is the canal, which forces you to go sort of around and into patterns. If it's just a court, you couldn't have done that. But being sliced that way and the sense of going up across a bridge changes pace. You look down, your bifocal's joggling, and it helps you change your pace as you walk in the different little squares. There are 4 or 5 different spaces just in that little tiny garden, which makes it bigger. Then you go down steps. It's below the level of the sidewalk, of the lobby entrance. That increases the size enormously. I mean, it was amazing what happened to that garden before we changed it, because all of a sudden it's twice as big. Well, of course, that's what we wanted in New York, was to create space where there had been just a small little outdoor room.
Do you think this new wing and its shadow will make a big difference on that space?
No, they won't. The shadow won't hurt. No, I don't really know what that's going to do. I'm not in on that part of things at all up there now. But I think that my main point is that museums should be designed for the delectation of people and for prevention of museum fatigue. I get museum fatigue in 5 minutes. I don't know about you. I just don't know how people do it day in, day out. If I go in and look at 3 pictures and flee. But you get much worse fatigue in a rabbit warren where you can't get out than you do in the Met where you walk further. But you have much more pleasure.
You mentioned earlier the spaces in the garden of the Museum of Modern Art, and it called to mind another new silhouette that you introduced in terms of architecture. I guess you have often designed against what is considered a conventional grain, and I'm thinking of those trapezoidal buildings in Houston.
Oh, Houston.
Pennzoil Place.
Yeah, Pennzoil Place, those 2 buildings that sort of hover over each other like this. Yeah, I was down there yesterday. It's now the symbol of the city. I mean, if you want to say Houston somewhere, you see these buildings. It's strange how it caught on. Well, that's in this mood, of course, of using sculpture at an architectural scale, large scale for impressiveness, and it works. I mean, I was amazed in Texas, where you can do almost anything, not like the rest of the country at all. where we put the buildings so close together that they overlap each other all the time, except you go around these freeways. It's good automobile architecture, I just realized. You come in and then all of a sudden the building just cuts itself in two like that.
There is a space between the two.
Space between two buildings, but it's so small, they touch like this, points. See, so as you see it, then it's gone again. It's very, very interesting. I hope this will be, but you can't tell till they're built. See, architects you can't make into models, because that's just a silly little toy. But it should be 100 feet, 120 feet high. It should be very impressive.
I thought models were one of the crutches of architects.
She's read more than I have in my own work. It's lucky I just did the proofs of my book, or I wouldn't know what you were talking about.
Now let's tell them what we're talking about. About 20 some odd years ago, Philip Johnson delivered a, I guess now famous lecture called The 7 Crutches of Architecture.
Yeah.
It was a lampoon on Ruskin. Perhaps you'd like to update those crutches for us.
Oh, I still think they're valid. I think.
Why don't you tell all of us?
I don't remember though. Do you? The
Use,
crutch of the
economy. I don't remember all 7, but they're right on the
Look, if you're not a very good architect, you have to have a crutch
The clients
to
need.
get you through. You see, and one of them I remember was serving the client.
Mm-hmm.
If the client wants a Gothic door here, or
We give them a Gothic
give
door.
them a Gothic door in modern buildings. So what? Aren't you supposed to serve the public or your client? Sure. See, so you get out of having to make a decision of whether that is a good design or not a good design. Yeah, the worst crutch is cheapness, because you can say, well, I had to build it that way because my clients didn't want to spend the money. Of course, I use it all the time. We all use all these crutches. But that's a very, very bad one, and you should be able to build even though it's with modest sums. The crutch of models, not drawing I use, not models, because we were all pro models in those days. The crutch of a beautiful drawing. See, in my day, 20, 30 years ago, if you made a beautiful drawing, it would seduce you into thinking the building was good. There's no way you make a drawing of a building. A building has to be good in 3 dimensions. You can't make it a drawing or a facade or a rendering. So
The only way to look at a building is to look at a building.
Is to look at a building. The only way to build it is to build it. It's too bad. It makes it hard.
What buildings of the last 20 years do you think reflect the best in architecture as you see it?
Oh, the last 20 years we haven't had much. I think that's where historians like ourselves have the greatest difficulty. When Alfred Barr was bringing his own taste down to the time we were in, the whole story of modern art gets all gooey. It's when Hitchcock or Pevsner write about the actual present that they're in, they get into terrible trouble because your schools aren't clear. What is happening in architecture today? I've seemed to prove to you that it's chaotic. See? Well, it won't be to the historians. I have no idea how they'll shred this apart. Hitchcock once pointed out that in 1923, Corbusier designed a house with a balcony bedroom looking over the double height room, a narrow house like this. That same year, Frank Lloyd Wright built in Pasadena the Millard House, which is exactly the same plan. Now, you see, they were mortal enemies. They looked, two houses looked entirely different. They couldn't have come from the same source. And yet the plan feeling of the time was so strong that they came out looking alike. Now, you see, what's history going to say? For instance, right now, there's a great feeling, I'm glad to say, is that our ceilings in our apartment houses are too low. See? But nobody thought they were low 20 years ago. Why make them higher? Mies van der Rohe, 20 years my senior. You see, say, when I did a house with a 13-foot ceiling, he said, why did you make the ceiling so high? I wanted a 10-foot ceiling in the Seagram building when we were working on that. But he said, well, what'd you do with that extra space above you? I still can't believe it, but Frank Lloyd Wright, of course, was the lowest of all, or Corbusier. Corbusier did 6'6" high rooms, which is even illegal. But he didn't see any sense in wasting all that space over your head. And yet now
Who makes the reference to the igloo, that one manages to bend over to enter an igloo, or when one has to?
When one has to, yes. But why do it when you don't have to? Well, these 8-foot ceilings in New York are a disgrace.
Recently, perhaps another developer thought they were getting a modern architect when you were asked to design the facade of that controversial building on Fifth Avenue opposite the Metropolitan Museum of Art. After long and heated community debate,
Protest, yes, indeed.
Rather than just a developer building, the combination of the Landmarks Commission, the Municipal Arts Society, and a group of citizen activists especially, banded together to redesign that building. However, it might have been too little too late in some ways, but at the 11th hour they called upon you to design a facade that was in some way compatible with its image across the street, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I assume that developer was somewhat surprised when you presented your design to him.
He certainly was. There wasn't much he could do. He's fortunately a very intelligent and very cultivated man, and he is a very quick study. I mean, he learned exactly what we were doing and spent freely and willingly to make this facade.
What does that building facade look like?
It was difficult because the building, you've probably been up to Park Avenue, Fifth Avenue recently. It's much too tall for the site because it's right next to a McKinley and White apartment house of 11 stories, and it's 22 stories. Very thin, tall facade, which had been designed with all glass. Of course, you have to have glass on the park, was his obvious reaction.
That's what you taught him in 1932.
I know. Oh,
and there are the effects of that.
And the effects of that. And I had to tell him that glass facing west is just lethal, and that the last thing you do want to hang pictures, and you can't hang pictures on glass, because the tenants of Olympic Towers are now finding out. And so most of the decorators cover up a good deal of the glass. It's amazing. So I reduced the windows to more proportions of the old New York, and I stole a lot of moldings from the buildings on either side. What I would do, for instance, I would take a molding, a great big one, half round, Taurus molding, from the McKinley and White building, carry it right across my building. Well, of course, it would hit at the wrong place. I just chopped it off and started it again. I mean, it's that kind of a semi-whimsical thing. I couldn't really make a great new building out of it. The structure was up.
And what is the material?
It's stone, the same stone as the McKinley and White building next to me. And then I had a problem at the top. Most New York apartment houses just cut it right off about here. There's no room for hair or topping of any kind. Well, I didn't like that. And then they stick the water tower, as you know. Water towers. Can't we do something about water towers? They sit up there. They're legal, I know, but there must be some other way. Anyhow, so there I had that terrible problem at the top. So I put a flat, I only get about 3 feet deep to work with, so I put a flat mansard. You probably saw it in the Times if you remember. A flat mansard up in front, well, fake front, held up by...
Had you ever done that before?
Nobody ever will again. I mean, it's like a Western town, you know, they put up these great high things and brace them up with 2x4s. They're up already. Next time you go fifth, just look at it. So, but I think you have to be slightly light about these things, but I'm very pleased with the results. And it gave me a chance to work with moldings that I never had. I mean, this was a brand new world, a very exciting world. The stone, for instance, how do you cut stone? How thick is the stone? How do you go around a corner with a piece of stone? What is the effect of a 10-inch round molding? Well, is the sun out or isn't it? You see, I mean, what kind of a shadow does it do when there isn't any sun out? It still has great power. So it'll be interesting to watch. That's going up right now. But you see, that's the result of the new. Barbara Lee and I were discussing it on the phone the other day. The change in sensibility, the change of the consumer. I'm just follow along the popular demand, of course. We're just, the artists are only froth at the top, like after Abex you got Johns. Well, it wasn't so much that Johns invented anything, or Rauschenberg, but they expressed what was seething underneath of Abex all that time. Not that Abex stopped.
Abstract expressionism.
Yeah, I think they're all familiar
But we were
with
in
the words.
the architectural term, I just
Oh yeah, well here we go back into painting. De Kooning is not the less a painter because he never followed around doing Johnsian images. He's still maybe the greatest American painter. But he goes right on his, and at the same moment, we go through the whole Warhol thing over here and the Johns thing over there. Well, the changing of the acceptability, the changing, oh, look at the neorealists, for goodness sakes. Their prices are higher than the abstract people now. So it's great. The marketplace is a very good gauge in a strange way. It's this developer, these group of Fifth Avenue citizens that came to him at the same time that wanted me to do it, at the same time that I wanted to do it. See, these are sensibilities that nobody but a Susan Sontag could pull apart and find out what really is in the air. But the fact that Barbara Lee's writing this book, the fact that she's on, I guess you're on all the commissions there are by now, and that we all should be on the same wavelength is unheard of, you see, because the people that wanted to go back, as we used to say, to McGinn, Mead, and White were the enemy in my day. You see, we have to be progressive. Oh, do we have to be progressive? Well, that sounds funny just to say that now. None of us believe in progress anymore. That sort of got put on a shelf along with lots of other ideas we thought were sacred, you know, that everything's getting better and better. Oh, is it? Everything gets, I don't think better and better. It gets changed all right, but it doesn't get better and better. And then this whole wave of let's preserve what we've got. Why do we just mindlessly take down a building instead of seeing what we could do with it? And already Brendan Gill and Barbara Lee have saved hundreds, I guess, and thousands of buildings, maybe too many, but that's a natural
That
reaction.
is the next question. There is indeed that possibility of saving too many. How do you preserve the past without jeopardizing either the present or the future?
I'd like to ask you that question. How do you analyze it?
Well, I think that there are ways other than individual designations. I did not expect to reply to this, but I'd be glad to.
Well, you know more about it.
I think there are ways other than individual designations, and I think really what one must think of is in terms of historic districts, special design districts, and think more in terms of areas and design control so that standards are established, and that on the one hand, architects are trained to build in constraining ways vis-a-vis old buildings, and add to old buildings in ways that are sympathetic to them as well. But tonight we're going to talk about you.
Well, you know, there was that great period from 1450 to 1550 when Brunelleschi built his Chapel of the Innocents, you know, with the Bombini and the spandrels. And 100 years later, they copied that thing right across the way, although architecture changed somewhat. So strong was the sense that Brunelleschi had created a beautiful plaza that it was continued in exactly the same style. Now that couldn't be possible even yet today. Now maybe with the idea of districts that something like that can come about. But I don't think the architects are as advanced as you are on this front yet.
Well, they may have that opportunity. I guess for a long while you've been known as a bit of a gadfly and a maverick to the profession.
Peck's bad boy.
However, Peck's bad boy is about to be awarded the gold medal of the AIA this coming May.
Imagine.
What are you going to tell them?
I wish you'd tell me what to tell them. I've insulted the profession and everybody in it for 50 years. I can't very well say I didn't mean it. And yet, but now I'm absurdly grateful that they have found me worthy of a gold medal, you see. So I can't say thank you, but I can't say, you damn fools. I can't do a Frank Lloyd, you know what Frank Lloyd Wright said when he got the gold medal? He said, it's about time. Very simple answer, I'm not that arrogant.
But here you are in the most austere company, both Saarinen, Louis Sullivan, Frank Lloyd Wright, even though you called him the best architect of the 19th century.
That's all right, he forgave me.
As I recall, the subject of that May AIA meeting is a time to learn. Will you have to address yourself to that as well?
No, but that gives me a clue. Why don't I? See, that gets me off the subject.
It seems to me that one of the important things is really the re-education of architects as well.
I'll talk to the uses of McGinn, Mead, and White. Huh?
That'll surprise them.
Yeah.
You say that architecture at the moment, one of the recurring themes of our conversation is filled, it's a period of eclecticism and pluralism. You also said that it is, not only said, your life has reflected the fact that you think that it is important to record historically, but also to push ahead in new directions. Where do you see us going now?
I can't see. That's the other thing that we're very bad as prophets. Historians and architects both make bad prophets. Naturally, we would foresee it in our own image. I mean, I would say, well, obviously the directions I'm working in are going to be the great ones. But it's true. I mean, Frank Lloyd Wright thought he was the last architect. He didn't see any point in bothering with the future. What do you mean? We were there, Michelangelo and Wright, and you had it. Well, we can't be that arrogant. His day, you could be a little more arrogant. But I can't see it. I can't see out of the present chaos.
Are
But I
we
don't see
through with
anything wrong
ugly?
with it. I don't see anything wrong with it either. Beg pardon?
Are we through with ugly?
Ugly? What does that mean?
As a period.
Oh, we're through with international style. But,
Well, I don't think of that as ugly.
I see. No, we'll never be through with ugly. It's with us forever. No, what I wish would happen is that there'd be a little more art in architecture and less commercialism, less business, less building just for the smallest buck. For instance, housing is our greatest need in this country. We could build easily 3 or 4 times as much as we are, and housing would mean new cities, and new cities would make a chance to create new plazas, new congeries of housing units. It only takes the will. We have the material, we have the labor. Labor is not used in this country to anywhere near the fullest extent. We don't have the will. We have the will to make billions of dollars worth of bombers and spread them around the world for peace. I understand. But we don't have the will to do anything about our cities and our housing. I really don't quite understand why not, because I've always had it, and I think everybody should join me. I think it's a noble and very simple-minded thing. How about applying to the federal government for an equal amount for the Department of Defense and the Department of Housing? That would give us, what, 100 billion this year? Oh, what I couldn't build for $100 billion, right?
Well, you have spent a lot of your time in the past designing houses and museums and smaller scale things. But now you're taking on larger and larger commercial commissions. Does that mean that your own vision of the city has changed? And I mean, does that imply that you feel cities and their commercial needs rather than individual buildings are really the problem that we have to address ourselves to?
I don't think there's any question. I think all of us architects feel it can't be solved on an individual level. Whether it can be solved on a commercial level or not, I don't know. I build commercial buildings because that's what people ask me to build. I'm as close to the oldest profession in the world as you can get. In other words, you hire me to build a small building, I build a small building. You hire me to build a big building, I build a big building. But I just wish that my client would be the federal government. L'architecte du roi is always what I've always wanted to be. I mean, some future democratic Louis that would want to build cities, you see. It isn't that we lack anything to do it with either, you see. We have the architects. We have very good architects, especially the young ones. But we don't have the clients.
Then are Las Vegas and the suburban shopping strip the legitimate architectural models of our time?
Well, I don't agree with Venturi on that. Las Vegas is not very pretty. It's not very charming. The spaces of those shopping centers is mean. And you can't have architecture without space. Venturi thinks you can. Well, we can disagree. A very brilliant man indeed. But to me, you could see into history what the monuments that have come to us as city plans are. Just the ones I mentioned a few. St. Mark's Square, you could mention quite a lot if you wanted to. The greatest architect in the world, of course, was the architect of Saqqara. What was his name? But there are many places you could make a list of 100 great congeries of buildings that make the world a happier place for existing. In this continent, of course, it was the civilizations before the Spaniards ever got here that makes the Mexican scene so beautiful. But in our day, you'd have a terrible time. You go to Taliesin West, maybe. That's a great grouping of buildings that's native to us and is really, really of the top quality of Frank Lloyd Wright's home in Arizona. Have you ever been out there?
Yes, I have.
It's just magic, you see. He knew all about processionalism and how you turn a corner and look through a view.
Are we approaching a pharaonic tendency in American life now? Is there, in major buildings, is there a kind of monumentality to architectural expressions now?
Isn't that amusing? I don't think so. Well, it always has been in commercial world that you want the building taller than your neighbor. I've got 2 now coming in that say, we want to build 40 stories. And I tell you, if you build 40 stories in this little town, which will be nameless right now, it will look, first place, absurd, and second, it'll all be so full of elevators that there isn't any room around the outside for the offices. Yeah, but we've got to do this because someone else was thinking of building one, and we got to get one up first. In other words, it isn't commercialism, it's pride. And individualistic pride that that raises very many ethical points. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't see any idea of what we're going to do in the future.
Well, what new approach should we take to urban buildings?
I don't take any, because I don't see any chance. I mean, being realistic means that I have to do what clients want. And being realistic means I like to build buildings. The dreamers are building, Corbusier built lots of cities in his dreams. So
was he the architect who was most your mentor ideologically?
No, Mies van der Rohe was
But
my
before
mentor.
Mies?
No,
I mean, did you
wasn't
think of
anybody.
Le Corbusier as the greatest of them all at any point?
Yes, I think he was a greater architect than Mies probably, but I never liked him personally. We never got along. No, my mentor was Mies because he had more vision, more passion, more gentleness, more sense of the historical process than any of the rest. So I felt that he was the greatest architect in the world. And we got about time. No,
I
we
think
just
that,
started.
I guess Paul Goldberger, the architecture critic of the New York Times, said it best, that Philip Johnson is an intensely urbane man who began by studying history and has ended up by making it. Thank you very much,
Thank
Philip
you.
Johnson,
Thank
for being
you.
with us tonight. And now what we do is have the class join in this conversation. If you have a question, will you please raise your hand, and I will call on you.
Before we do that, I have a brilliant
Yes.
idea that we turn these lights off and
I
turn
think
the
it'd be a
house lights
terrific
on again
idea,
because
yes.
we're dying of heat up here.
Can we do that, please?
You too, huh? Oh, look, there's the audience. Right there. Didn't know you were there.
The woman in the second row had a question.
Yes.
Is the sound still on, however? You are recording the sound, I hope. Please.
In the building you're building on Madison, did you take into consideration at all